You are listening to Africa World Hour here on Channel Africa, the African Perspective, live from our Auckland Park headquarters here in Johannesburg as we bring you the latest news. So it's 60 minutes of news. One planet, countless stories, all from here on the continent and beyond this as we bring you the top stories across the world, and we navigate the issues that are bringing about the voices, the views, the perspectives that matter. And this is a show that not only tells you what is happening wherever you are, we'd like to hear what's happening in your world, what is influencing your conversations, your decisions, what's happening in your community. We'd certainly like to hear. Send us your thoughts. Voice notes number 063-406-9126. And of course, if you'd like to reach out to us on email, it's info@channelafrica.org. And if you want to stream us live from wherever, you can do that on YouTube. We'll go to the SABC Plus app. We are also on the DSTV audio bouquet 80 to find us on OpenView as well. 628 is the channel number. Right, let's start now with those top stories. U.S. Cardinal Robert Prevost has been elected Pope, the first time in an American will head the Roman Catholic Church. The 69-year-old new Pope appeared at the balcony in St. Peter's Basilica a few hours ago and said, "Peace be with you all." He thanked his fellow cardinals for selecting him, and he also spoke in Italian, Spanish and Latin. Trent Murray has more.
The world has got a new pope. The world's 1.4 billion Catholics have a new leader after the death of Pope Francis. That smoke coming from the chimney, a distinct white colour compared to the previous black signals that we had seen over the past 24 hours. Yeah, there are people cheering now. Those cheers are growing louder. The bells are tolling here in Vatican City at this historic moment. We expect tens of thousands of people here right now. This was the fourth round of voting. There are people dancing, cheering, jumping up and down. They are very, very happy at this moment.
Trent Murray reporting on that very sacred moment that's happening in Rome. So to China, where the President Xi Jinping has told Russia's Vladimir Putin today that their two countries should be friends of steel, as they pledge to boost cooperation to a new level at a time of heightened confrontation with the West. At the talks in the Kremlin, the two leaders cast themselves as defenders of a new world and no longer dominated by United States. President Xi is the most powerful of more than 24 foreign leaders who are visiting Moscow this week to mark today's 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Dasha Chernyshova has more from Moscow.
China's Xi Jinping is in Russia on the 4-day official visit, and after the talks between the sides, there have been two strategic joint statements signed by the heads of state, as well as 20 other documents that have been also worked out, elaborated, and finally signed. We understand that one of the documents, one joint statement, deals with the continuation of strengthening the bilateral relationship between the two countries, in which Moscow and Beijing say they are going to ramp up cooperation in order to decisively counter the U.S. efforts to contain them both.
And the UAE and Uganda have signed 6 key agreements as Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, UAE Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, started his working visit to the country today. During a meeting with Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, Sheikh Abdullah discussed bilateral relations and ways to enhance cooperation, particularly in the economic, commercial, investment and energy sectors.
A lot has been happening on the people-to-people side, on the trade side. Obviously, today we are seeing a lot of potential when it comes to investment and in different sectors. Your Excellency, that's obviously happening because we are interested in Uganda, but also more importantly because you are welcoming us. Yes. So we are honored and privileged. So thank you very much, Your Excellency. Sir, there is a lot of potential in this relationship. You mentioned areas regarding transport, regarding energy and tourism. We would like to do more in our bilateral relationship.
And the Lesotho Revenue Services, in partnership with the South African Revenue Service, the Border Management Authority and the World Customs Organization, is launching an end-to-end release study between Lesotho and South Africa.
Maseru and Maputo Bridge are earmarked for an end-to-end binational release study regarding an in-depth diagnostic of border procedures. This study is preceded by a landmark agreement that enables Lesotho holders of ordinary passport a conditional 90 days visa exemption into South Africa. Several neighboring ports of entries into South Africa have been earmarked for major upgrades in order to facilitate for a much smoother border operation. Both experts and users have hailed this study as key to unlocking trade barriers between the two nations.
At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla.
One of the developments that's been watched across the world has been the election of a new pope. So we have brought you the latest highlights on that. We'll delve into it a bit deeper later on. But now let's talk about one of the issues that is seriously at the tip of many tongues of financial leaders, market leaders, and of course politicians. Senior United States and Chinese officials will meet in Geneva, Switzerland over the weekend for talks that should usher in the start of broader trade negotiations between the two economic giants. The talks come after weeks of tensions between Washington and Beijing that has seen tit-for-tat tariffs between the two nations reach well beyond 100%, measures that have roiled global markets and escalated concerns of global downturn. The U.S. delegation will be led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Premier and Economic Tsar He Lifeng. Sherman Bryce Peace has more.
With the US tariff on Chinese goods at 145% and China's tariff on US imports at 125%, the current posture has been unsustainable for the two global heavyweights, leading to broad uncertainty and what the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent equated with a trade embargo.
As you may have read in the press, I will be going to Switzerland and the negotiations will begin on Saturday. The trade negotiations will be led by myself and Ambassador Jameson Greer, USTR. It is time for China to graduate from developing country status. It is the second largest economy in the world. They are a large, important economy, and they should no longer be granted the status of a developing economy.
China has indicated that it will enter the trade talks firmly opposed to the US tariff hikes, after both sides struck a strident public posture, waiting for the other side to blink first. China adamant it was the USA that requested the trade talks. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian.
It is the U.S. that has launched a tariff war against China, and China's attitude has been consistent and clear. If the U.S. wants to fight, then we will defend ourselves to the end. If the U.S. wants to talk, then we will leave our doors open. Recently, the U.S. side has repeatedly expressed their willingness to negotiate with China. Trade and tariff wars have no winners. If the U.S. side truly wishes to solve issues through dialogue and negotiation, it must stop threatening and extorting, and talk to China on the basis of equality, respect, and mutual benefits.
China has warned that the US tariff policy would severely impact the global economy. Chair of China's Security Regulatory Commission Wu Qing.
Since the beginning of April, the U.S. government's tariff policy has severely impacted international economic and trade order, and the international financial market has been in turmoil, which has also brought great pressure to the domestic capital market. As a next step, the China Securities Regulatory Commission will continue to promote the function of the capital market. And while strengthening supervision, it will also strive to convey the temperature of supervision and try its best to help affected companies cope with the impact of the U.S. tariffs.
The U.S. countered that China asked for the talks, as public perception on both sides drives the narrative. with Washington seeking to rebalance trade with the interests of the American worker and domestic manufacturing. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance.
We think that the PRC is going to have to, frankly, let their own population consume a little bit more. They've held consumption levels down in order to increase these massive exports. It means that American manufacturers are going to have to be treated more fairly in some of these global trade deals. It means we're going to have to cut some new trade deals with some of our friends in Europe, but also with some of our more adversarial nations. But that also, we have to be careful here. Because while we want to rebalance global trade, and that has certainly been the explicit goal of our policy, we also want to make sure that we do this in the right way.
President Trump was asked about pulling back the tariffs on China to provide the talks in Geneva with some momentum.
China says in order to have substantive negotiations, you have to bring down your 145% tariffs. Are you open to pulling back your tariffs in order to get China to the negotiating table?
No.
The U.S. Federal Reserve keeping rates steady this week amid continued uncertainty, Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
The tariff increases announced so far have been significantly larger than anticipated. All of these policies are still evolving, however, and their effects on the economy remain highly uncertain. As economic conditions evolve, we'll continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the outlook, and the balance of risks. If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment.
The two sides likely to play hardball, but compromises will be key to any path forward. The reality is that Chinese factories have suffered a major slowdown in recent months, with shipments to the United States dropping sharply. While the U.S. economy shrank in the first quarter of this year, signs that this current dynamic benefits neither country. It will be important for both sides, despite their public posture, to find an off-ramp to their trade war. I'm Shervin Bryce-Pease in New York.
And now we talk about that recent development that we've been watching. White smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel and the bells of St. Petersburg ringing out on Thursday, signalling that the cardinals have elected a new pope to succeed Pope Francis and take charge of the Roman Catholic Church. The election, of course, the election comes as the world awaited news on who would step into those big shoes of the Pope Francis' position, the election coming on the first full day of voting by the 133 cardinal electors who secluded themselves behind the Vatican's medieval walls on Wednesday afternoon for reaction on the decision. We're joined now by Father Simon Donnelly from the Archdiocese of Johannesburg. A very good evening to you, Father Donnelly, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Sure. Hi, good evening.
So perhaps let's just first start by understanding this process that has just unfolded and culminating in the new pope being chosen. What is the symbolism of the behind closed door meeting, and then, of course, the rising of the white smoke to signal the choice of the new pope?
Well, there's an old tradition that the cardinals, their main job is to pray and then to choose, And so it's very much a sense that this is not just a political choice, we want to be inspired by the Holy Spirit, so their job is to do this quietly without interruption from outside kind of distractions, So the idea is very much, in the past this has been, there have been factions of this or that government or country who'd want their candidates to be put forward. And the idea is no, the cardinals, just like the apostles of the Lord Jesus, really want just to pray to the Holy Spirit and ask for guidance and choose someone. So in the peace of prayer and without, kind of outside influence. So that's very much the idea of behind closed doors. It's not so much about hiding, it's just about quiet, and it's hard to pray and hard to listen when there's so much noise, and our society is very noisy. And the white smoke is just the signal, the indication that it's an old tradition going back 5 or so centuries that they would let us know, if you like, when they had reached a decision. There was a 2/3 majority, and there's a reason for that, because in the past they sometimes took days days, weeks, even months to choose somebody. And the people who had to feed them got a bit fed up and said, listen, we're going to lock you in. So it's a conclave. Those are the Latin words for with a key. And when you're ready, that should be soon, you please let us know. And the idea was black smoke when they were not yet ready and white smoke when they were. So that's it.
Okay. And the cardinals that are present, how is that makeup determined?
It's very much at the prerogative of the Pope of the time. So each Pope will name certain cardinals. That means he's looking for usually bishops, usually people of a little bit more advanced in age, not necessarily, but usually in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who can help him to guide and govern the church, the universal church. Look, it's a large body of people. There are 1.4 billion Catholics and many, many other Christians besides, and the idea is these men should help him to govern the church, as they did originally with just 7 deacons in Rome. And so, he would say, I name the following at a particular what's called a consistory, which can happen every year or even more often when he gathers all the cardinals around and then names some new ones. So many of the current cardinals have been named by Pope Francis, others by Pope Benedict, and some by Pope John Paul,
And I'd imagine that then also gives a good spiritual connection for that duty, as you say, where they sit, they reflect and allow guidance of the Holy Spirit for the choice that they make of the new Pope.
Sure. Look, yeah, you're quite right. I mean, their primary job as cardinals is to choose or elect a pope. The word cardinal is a funny word from the Latin for a hinge. They are the hinges of the church, if you like, of the doors of the church. They are to be relied on. We need hinges to open doors. So they are to help the pope, who is, the word pope just means father, il papa in Italian, and they are to help him to govern this body of the faithful, of the Christian church. And it doesn't matter where they come from, in a sense, and who names them, but that is their job, and their job is to elect a new pope when the time comes, which is now. And in between that is to help him govern and administer the church, because that's one of the functions of any bishop, is to teach and offer sacrifices, and also and to govern. And the church, the body of the faithful needs governing. So that's really their job. They become Roman citizens, Vatican citizens, and they used to all live in Rome, but that was a long time ago. Now they live all over the world. So they come and go as needed,
And this is the first time an American has been elected Pope, and that is 69-year-old Cardinal Robert Prevost. I was saying, Father, earlier on that, and I know you say it's not a political decision, but given the geopolitical upheavals that we're seeing as a result of the leadership in America, is this not a God-sent decision?
You'll have to discuss that with the Holy Spirit. Well, look, we feel, not in any kind of automatic way, but this is a very serious sense that their job in these past days, first of all, to mourn and grieve and then bury the Pope who has died, and then to pray for, inspiration that the Church will choose her worthiest son, as they used to say, to serve, And so, yes, I mean, of course, there are always geopolitical implications. In the past, there was often between the countries of the old Christian world, Spain and France and other countries, and Italy, of course. But now, to have another pope from the New World, and the northern part of the New World is quite something. But it's a very interesting choice, right? Because he is American, but he spent large parts of his life, ministering to people in South America, in Spanish-speaking Latin America, communities with a great deal of poverty. So he's no stranger to poverty, but also, and is a son of, as I can see, from various parts of the French and Italian and world. So it seems like a good, a holy choice, but hey, that's up to the Holy Spirit.
And the name bestowed of him, of Pope Leo XIV, are you able to share a little bit more insights into that?
Well, that's an interesting choice, and I imagine he'll make reference to it at some point. But so there are a number of names, right? The popes have taken over the last 20 centuries. There are many names, and some have recurred more than once. And so there have been 13 Leos until now. I suspect, but I don't know, that it is linked to Pope Leo XIII. Leo XIII was the last pope of the 19th century, so the end of the 19th century. It's the beginning of the 20th. and he reigned for a long time, so one of the longest papacies, a bit like Pope John Paul. And there's always been times of turbulence, but one of his major themes was to do justice to people. And he wrote a very, very important encyclical, that means a letter to all Christians, called Rerum Novarum, of the new things. That's always the first two words in the letter. And it's about social justice, and it was the time of the Industrial Revolution, but he was speaking bluntly about how we are to behave justly and how to treat one another justly. It's so important was his letter that many popes after him wrote their own letters to the whole church, referring back to his letter. They wrote letters 40 years afterwards and 100 years afterwards, and Pope John Paul referred often back to this, because the issue of work and justice, labor and justice, is important and has often been exploited in all different directions. And both capitalism and communism have failed dismally often, in the way workers have been treated and the way justice has been understood or misunderstood. And so Pope Leo XIII was a very important voice in this, and I suspect, he's I don't know, but I suspect he's drawing inspiration from that. And like Pope Francis, he will be very familiar with tremendous poverty in Latin America.
And I want to talk about that, the likeness, the sameness of character. And I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, the work of the church, one relies greatly on prayer, supplication, and guidance of the Holy Spirit. Sure. But they are men of the flesh. They're human beings. So their personality, their character will also come under scrutiny. So what kind of a person would you describe the new Pope as, despite the characteristics you just attached to him now?
Well, you're asking a good question, and the short answer is I don't really know, because he's not that well known among cardinals. He's fairly new as a cardinal, and that's great. We smile and we say, "Wow, the Holy Spirit is full of surprises," as he was with some of our previous popes. So many people were looking at other candidates in the last days, and perhaps not so much at Cardinal Prévost, or Prévost, as the French call him, But yeah, we shall see. I mean, I think there's a great strength in drawing on experiences from the New World, and both North and South America, in a sense, count as the New World, but also with roots in the Old World. There's this need to bridge cultures and bridge times, and economic systems and political systems. So let's see. I can't say that I know Pope Leo the 14th or Cardinal Prévost or Prévost well. But he has tremendous experience also as the General Superior of an important congregation in the Church's life, the Order of St. Augustine. So he'd be a man of tremendous prayer. Augustine was one of the earliest fathers of the Church, an African, a North African, from Tagaste, which is somewhere between Ethiopia and Tunisia, and so a very, very important figure in the early Church, a convert. So I'm sure he would, and he referred to that this evening, to St. Augustine, so I'm sure we'll hear more of that too.
Father, thank you so much for that edifying conversation. Father Simon Donnelly of the Archdiocese of Johannesburg, just speaking to us about the announcement of the new Pope. It's 23 minutes past 9.
Ahoy, mate!
To all the corners of the world, indeed, we do bring you the latest news on what's happening in and around your world, not just current affairs, but of course what is impacting on people's lives. And we'd like to hear from you what's impacting your life, your conversations, your community. So write in, reach us via socials, and just go to Channel Africa 1. So we speak about a new investigation now by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. It has revealed significant concerns regarding the recruitment and labor conditions of young women brought to work in Russia's Alaburga Special Economic Zone. The report is titled, "Who is Making Russia's Drones? The Migrant Women Exploited for Russia's War Economy." For more on this, we're joined now on the line by Julia Stanyard, Senior Analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Are you with us, Professor?
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay, so let's just talk about this study. Is it a new phenomenon, or has it been something that's been in existence for a while?
Maybe we check. I think we might have mixed the things. I heard I was to talk about the story on e-learning Africa, and probably if you can check again, because what you just asked me is not something that I'm aware of.
Okay, Professor, I just want to make sure that we are speaking about the same thing here. And is this regarding the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime?
No, it's not.
Okay,
it's not.
I do apologize. Yeah. We seem to have our wires crossed here. We will just take a quick break and rectify that.
Thank you very much.
And it's 28 minutes past 9. We continue with Africa World Hour here on Channel Africa, the African Perspective. This time we talk about more than 20 ministers and representatives from various African countries in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, attending the e-Learning Africa annual conference taking place at the Julius Nyerere International Convention Center. The conference was established in 2005 and is the largest and most comprehensive knowledge-sharing event for digital education, training and skills on the African continent. For more on this gathering, we're now joined on the line by Professor Ladlaus Mnyone, Director of Science, Technology and Innovation at the Ministry of Education in Tanzania. Prof, I believe now we are on the same page. We're discussing the e-learning conference. So please tell us about the significance of this.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the e-learning Africa. Actually, we are, let me say, the country, we are so much privileged to host the second e-learning Africa conference, because as you are aware, this has happened 17 times. And one of the times it happened in Tanzania, and this was 2011. So this year, 2025, is again happening in Tanzania for the second time. There's a lot in terms of the significance of this one, and particularly if you think of it in terms of how it can impact the use of digital technologies in the education sector, you really see huge opportunity, because as a country, we have strengthened our efforts and focus on the use of digital technologies. So in this case, you have technical experts, we have businessmen, you have investors, we have many other categories of Tanzania who have managed to get the opportunity to share experiences, to discuss about the strategies and lessons from other countries, which we think will significantly affect or will significantly promote the country's efforts towards increasing the application of digital technologies in the education sector, which of course at the end of the day will also influence other sectors, considering that education is the core of the development of several other sectors.
I'm just curious as to the advancement. Obviously, as we further digitize as a world, as a continent, and I'm more interested in the pace at which Africa is catching up with the rest of the world with regard to the use of technology to teach, but also to use to, tackle our own challenges.
Yeah. I think this is a huge opportunity, because if you look at Africa, we have most of us have common problems, and it turns out that if we ensure that we strengthen our capacities in Africa, we will be able to come up with technologies that are highly customized, technologies that reflect on our challenges, technologies that reflect on our needs, technology challenges that reflect on our human capacity. So at the end of the day, more than being able to solve challenges within the individual countries, they will also open up markets within Africa itself. So I really see it as a huge opportunity, just like I said, because it will help us at some point also pull up resources, or sometimes not spending excessively in terms of resources, because we could actually leverage from technologies that are being generated from other African countries, which are so much related, so that we keep on increasing on top of what other countries are doing, rather than every single nation within Africa thinking that in every single aspect it has to stand on its own.
And this conference bringing together educators, policy makers, trainers, technology specialists, development experts, where do they all converge, particularly on the fact that at some point technology was something very scary to a particular generation, but this particular generation is not afraid of it, and in fact is so used to it. But you need to ensure that there's intergenerational, multi-generational coalescence around the use of technology that we're all comfortable with to move forward with our daily lives.
Yeah, I really see a huge opportunity here, because if you think of digital technologies, I mostly refer to it as an enabler, as an enabler that sits in the middle of different other sectors. Because, for example, when you have one particular technology, it could serve several purposes across sectors. Just like I said, you may have a technology that the initial or the original focus could be in education, but at the end of the day, similar technologies or similar principles, similar approaches could also be deployed in other sectors. But most importantly, when we are thinking of digital technologies, even if we are thinking it, even if our departure point is on education, but we must make sure that we think of alternative technologies, we think of human resources based on the needs and the challenges in other sectors. Otherwise, we might find ourselves that we have a capable human resource, we have good technologies, but they cannot actually solve the challenges or the needs that are in the other sectors. So all the time, we should align not only our requirements, but we should be able to see across. We have to mirror across and see the challenges that are happening in other sectors, so that we are able to come up with technologies that would have a multi-sectoral effect, or in some cases we say a trans-sectoral effect.
So when we look at artificial intelligence, for instance, what are the gaps that we are not filling that we could be overcoming obstacles by use of AI that we are just not doing at the moment?
Thank you very much. In terms of artificial intelligence, I really see this one as a very, very good technology. But the problem is how do we deploy artificial intelligence? If you ask me, I would say that if we think of the use of artificial intelligence based on challenges that are happening in Africa, based on challenges that are happening within our individual countries, so that what we need to really see is how do we deploy artificial intelligence to solve our challenges, to meet our requirements, then we might be able to leverage and make impact relatively faster than how we are proceeding now. Because what we're actually doing, we are trying to compete with other countries. We are thinking of competing with China. We think of competing with Korea. We think of competing with the United States. But actually, what we need to focus on is, yes, this is a good technology, but we should see how it can focus on our local context. So you think of artificial intelligence to think of our own agriculture. We think of our mining sector. We think of our education sector. So there's no need of running after what other countries are. The most important thing is look at our own challenges and see how best we can deploy artificial intelligence to have them addressed.
Professor, we really thank you for your time and your insights. Professor Ladlaus Mnwane, Director of Science, Technology and Innovation at the Ministry of Education in Tanzania, speaking about that e-learning conference taking place there.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
It's 2:10. So we go back to that story about a new investigation by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organizational Crime. It's revealed significant concerns regarding the recruitment and labor conditions of young women brought to work in Russia's Alubuga Special Economic Zone. The report is titled, "Who's Making Russia's Drones? The Migrant Women Exploited in Russia's War Economy." For more on the report, we're joined now by Julia Stenya, Senior Analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening. Thanks very much for having me on.
So the question I'd like to start with is whether this is a new phenomenon that's just been discovered, or has it been something that's been there for a while?
As we understand it, the program has been operating since 2023. There's been some previous reporting on this program, first in Russian media, then in some Western English language media as well. But as we understand, it started over the last couple of years and then expanded up until the present day.
I'm just hoping that our line is just going to get a bit clearer, because I'm struggling to hear you. But let's start with the findings. What have been the findings?
So we found that there are elements of this program which appear to be deceptive in their recruitment. The program is to recruit these young women to the Alabuga Special Economic Zone in Russia, in Tatarstan, where they're told that they'll be taking a range of activities, including factory work, but also cleaning, catering, etc. While that appears to be true, what they're not told is actually that the purpose of the factory work that they're undertaking is to produce drones which will ultimately be used by the Russian military, including in their war in Ukraine. And this appears to be withheld from these women until their arrival at the site. We also interviewed several participants and other students from the Polytechnic College that operates at the economic zone, and there were some allegations around exploitative conditions for these workers as well, whether that's subjecting them to harassment and overextended working hours and surveillance by the staff management as well. So it's a mixture of the deception and the exploitation that really concerns us.
And this recruitment, you say, initially it targeted African countries, but has started expanding to Latin America and South Asia.
Indeed, yeah. So we were able to identify through a range of our interviews and online research as well that they've recruited from over 30 countries, but targeting many more, up to around 84 or 85 that they've listed that they're interested in recruiting from. So we believe that they've also transitioned their recruitment targeting to also include Latin America within the past 6 months or so. It's not clear what has prompted this shift, but they are continuing to recruit from a range of African countries as well, and other South Asian countries, including, for example, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh.
And this, I believe you say, is online recruitment done under the guise of work-to-study recruitment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's one of the deceptive elements that we found in this as well. Some of the women who participated in this program that we spoke to said that they'd joined under the impression that they'd be able to study as an undergraduate student in Russia and then have these sort of work study opportunities. And much of the recruitment material that we've seen from this program really does flag that as well. It talks about study, it presents images of these women wearing school uniforms as though they are students, but in fact it is a hard work program, and that's one of the things that seems to attract people quite naturally into this form of recruitment. They see it as an opportunity to work and study abroad.
And I'm curious, just in terms of where the recruitment is done, as you say, some of it online, is it through a private company or is it directly linking the Russian state to it?
Mm-hmm. So as we understand it, it is a private company that controls the Alabuga SEZ. The SEZ ultimately is owned by a department of the government of Tatarstan, the region in Russia where it is located. But the recruitment is done online, including via social media channels, both their own social media channels and paying influencers online to advertise the program to prospective recruits. As I think we mentioned before, they're targeting young women aged 18 to 22.
And I understand the report also says the treatment that they're exposed to. You spoke about hard labor, that they reports of harassment, racism, etc. What other violations are there, and how does the report come about, the information, especially if you say there's deep surveillance that would prevent people from reporting what's happening there?
Indeed, yeah. And to explain further, these harsh working conditions are not applied only to the women who are recruited under this Alabuga Start program, but also many students who work at the site. These include Russian students and students brought from neighbouring countries to Russia, such as Kyrgyzstan, who are brought under the Alabuga Polytech, which is a polytechnic university which is based at the site. But they are also then brought in to work on the drone production alongside some of the Alabuga Start recruits. The Alabuga Start recruits are the ones who are brought in from Africa, Latin America, etc., through this broader recruitment program. And they're normally given the more mundane, lower skilled tasks within the drone production lines. And many of the Alabuga Polytech students as well have spoken about the harsh working conditions they're subjected to, the kinds of long hours, the exposure to harsh chemicals in the course of these drone productions, because they're using these materials that then ultimately go into the drones. That they've highlighted health risks because of that. A level of surveillance by the human resources and management at the site, that does present a significant barrier to them reporting these issues, because they are concerned that if it's known that they've been sharing information publicly about this, that will bring sanctions upon themselves. But some of them have been able to share this kind of information online. Some of them have been able to speak out about it as well. So while difficult, it has remained.
All right. We really appreciate your time and sharing that information with us. Very worrying report by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. It brings the time to 14 minutes to 10. Speaking to us there was Julia Stanyat. She's a senior analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, speaking to us about a report speaking about the abuse, labor recruitment under false pretenses of young women to Russia's Alabuga Special Economic Zone.
Ritmos e cultura com o embaixador da música africana e lusófona, Jacobi Wagantivani.
To go before we end the program, and we end with a rather disturbing story. I mentioned it earlier on when I was speaking to Mariamo. Sandparks reporting, as it says, one of its worst incidents of poisoning. At least 123 vultures dying in the South African flagship national park after eating the carcass of an animal, an elephant in this case, that was poisoned by poachers. The poisoning was with agricultural pesticides. Another 83 vultures were rescued from the site and transported for treatment and are reported to be recovering. We're joined now by Sandparks spokesperson, Mr. Ike Patla. Ike, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. The pictures that you've sent are quite horrific. So tell us exactly how this was discovered.
Good evening, Tsepiso, and good evening to all your listeners and viewers in this instance, because technology has really made us advance. We now are streaming. What happened was, since we've had this incident of vultures being poisoned en masse, we put some devices on them, which are satellite driven, and we didn't see any movement for quite some time. And once it senses that the birds are not moving, then it sends out an alert. Unfortunately, it was late in the evening and we were not able to react. But at first light in the morning, our section ranger has a Bantam light aircraft. He flew over where the coordinates were directing him and came upon the green scene of an elephant carcass and those dead birds around. But fortunately, because it was a fresh carcass, there were still some birds that were fluttering around, although they were affected, but we were able to rescue 84 of them.
And the population of the vultures at Sandparks or in that area, are you able to ascertain how many? And is it possible that some may have consumed and flown to another part that may not be detected at this point?
We We have not been able to do the census thus far, but we know because of the incidents of poisoning that we've had in the past that the population has been negatively affected. But this type of poisoning and what is being used here, it doesn't give the animals that chance of flying away and dying elsewhere.
So talk to us about this agricultural pesticides. Is it a common thing that you've seen, a trend that poachers are using to trap their prey, so to speak?
In most instances where we've experienced poisoning on carcasses, it has been the same one. And we have engaged the people who sell the stuff to people that they shouldn't be selling to people that walk off into their shops, but they should be able to ascertain if those people really are going to use them for the intended purpose. And we understand that those who buy them legally then have to leave their details. But in this instance, investigations are ongoing. And because the scene was very fresh, it is still an active crime scene. And we will get further information from the investigators once they've done their work.
And I know, Braik, you and your team of researchers there at SANParks and other scientific parts of SANPark do a lot of work, including forensic work. And it's amazing from what you've imparted in the past, the lengths to which poachers will get to. Tell us about the security. What have you been able to do to help protect animals so far?
You know, we have fences and we have entrance gates, but obviously criminals, they vandalize the fences and then they will come through. In this instance, initial indications are that the people might have been there for quite some time. And the reason we're saying that is because there was a lot of meat that was removed from the carcass before it was laced. And the only thing that we do is to get the law enforcement agencies involved, to get the merchants that sell the stuff to people to record the names and identification of the people that are buying this type of material. And then we go out to communities, tribal leaders, tribal authorities. Fortunately, we've lived with our communities for over 100 years, and we have forums within those. And it's only those things that we are able to do at this stage. We also hold talks with traditional healers, because in some instances we suspected that the birds are being harvested for their body parts, but we have soon realized that there is an illegal black market for game meat, and that seems to be the prevalent exercise that people are doing at this stage. And we can't make an excuse so that it's poverty, it's pure criminality. And this affects the park negatively. It's going to affect communities that live around there. Entrepreneurs that run tourism packages will not be able to service clients, because clients come to the park as a catalyst to rural economic development. So if you don't have animals that people travel from other parts of the world to come and see, obviously it's going to affect people negatively. Those who are working inside the park might also lose their jobs because of lack of tourists who are coming to the park. So it's very important for all South Africans to be involved in trying to combat this scourge of poaching and snaring, so that we can look after our natural heritage. And tourism, as we know, is one of the best employers. They create job opportunities for many people in the country.
And one of the great contributors to the GDP as well. And I see here that when you talk about our heritage, that Many of the vulture species are endangered on the continent, and the poisoning also affected birds that included Cape vultures, the endangered lappet-faced vultures, and white-backed and hooded vultures. So the education programs that you have for communities, for those that come in, for them to understand that this is actually the heritage for our children. Because if these die, then we are not able to educate them about the existence of these animals.
Absolutely. We found our forefathers, they left this heritage for us. So we have to look after it so that future generations can also be able to come and enjoy. And it's quite important for all of us to pull together and try and end the scourge of poaching. And in some instances, we find it's people that come from either Mozambique or others come from Zimbabwe, because this is in the northernmost part of the Kruger National Park. And those people are just few of them. And it's greedy, it's people that have criminal intentions, and they don't care about other people, but care about themselves and what they can get out of that meat that they're going to sell, and sometimes out of the ivory that they will take from the carcasses.
And just also on a final note, Ike, the role of, vultures as part of the ecosystem. I see a report here saying that, even though people don't quite understand them or like them, that they're actually worth $1.8 billion a year to certain ecosystems, in particular Southern Africa. So talk to us about the importance of vultures, what they actually do and why we need them.
Vultures are scavengers, and they do clean up every carcass that we find, and therefore preventing any disease from spreading. They also spread seeds around the park so that trees can grow in areas and other plant material. And they also are cleaning. They decontaminate some of the water when they go and take a drink or bath in those rivers and the dams that we have. So they are a very crucial part of our ecosystem. And every species, we know that it's very important if you want to have a healthy ecosystem. And that's what we try to manage. And once we have this kind of incidents, it becomes very difficult for the population to recover, because vultures, they can only give birth once in a year and once they have reached adulthood. So the rate of recruitment might not match that of the poaching incidents that we see.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing those details with us, Ike Phahla. He is SANParks, South African National Parks spokesperson, speaking to us about that horrific incident. More than 100 vultures killed at the park following the consumption of elephant carcass, which was poisoned by poachers. Brings the time to just about chaser time, and we've got Shayla in the studio. Hello, honey.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. So what's happening on Hotlines this evening?
So we continue the trend of celebrating Black excellence. And so today we're going to be looking at pioneers, groundbreakers rather, and innovators. And one such place that we're going to be looking at is the informal economy, right? So this is the township economy, where people don't think money is made, but I can guarantee
lots of
you
money. I actually had a conversation, sorry to cut in, very recently that says that it's a 900 billion rand sector.
Think of the lady who sells the food just at the corner of the street, and everyone rushes to her because they don't want to cook, because she really makes nice pap and wors and the like. And so we're going to be touching base on that. And then we're going to step into the world of literature, and we're going to look at what it takes to publish your own book. Some people think it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. No, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Why would anybody think that?
I will tell you why.
Because everybody is writing and publishing, right?
Exactly. That's what we think. I remember a book came out by Nicolette Mashile, and there were a number of typos.